peoples of the worldwide federated internet. What's good? Are you ready to hear a story filled with, or an account filled with drama, intrigue, deceit? Well, you're going to get a little bit of all of that with what we're going to get into today in the book of Genesis, chapter 37. And we're going to pick up on verse 13. So let's get into this. And Israel said unto Joseph, do not thy brethren feed the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send thee unto them. And he said to him, here am I. And he said to him, go, I pray thee, see whether it be well with thy brethren, and well with the flocks, and bring me word again. So he sent him out of the vale of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. So Joseph's brothers are supposed to be in Shechem tending to the flock. So Israel, clearly we can see he trusts Joseph to bring him an accurate report of what's going on. And we see why he trusts him to bring an accurate report. If you remember in verse 2 of this same chapter, I'm going to read it. It said, these are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah and with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought unto his father the evil report. So they were up to no good. They were not doing what they were supposed to do. And what we see is the sins and the problems of Abraham and Isaac being carried out in the children of Jacob or Israel, just like it was carried out from Abraham to Isaac. These things move on. The children have seen what the fathers have done, and they've carried on with the things they watched their father do. So we're going to see how the children of Israel get down. And boy, is there a lot going on right now. All right, so verse 15. And a certain man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field, and the man asked him, saying, what seekest thou? So Joseph comes to the field, and he doesn't see anyone, and he's like, what is going on? Now, where were they, and why weren't they there? Was this part of the evil report that Joseph brought to Israel in verse 2? And this is my guesstimation. My guesstimation was in verse 2. All right, so let's read it again so I can get you to understand this. These are the generations of Jacob, verse 2 of Genesis 37. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah and with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. So what was the evil report? Well, we see here that they were supposed to be in Shechem, but they weren't. Could it be that they were lax on their responsibility? Could it be that Joseph was actually doing the bulk of the work, and he was like, hey, our father sent us out here to do a job, and they're not really doing what they were sent out here for. Their minds are on something else. They're doing something else. And I think we kind of see that's a possibility that that's the case, because we see here they're supposed to be in Shechem. Where are they? They're not there. Joseph gets to the field and he's like, yo, where's everybody? So, he meets up with this man that says, hey, who are you seeking? And he said, verse 16, I seek my brethren. Tell me, I pray thee, where they feed their flocks. And the man said, they are departed hence, for I heard them say, let us go to Dothan. And Joseph went after his brethren and found them in Dothan. That word Dothan means two wells. So they were supposed to be in Shechem feeding a flock, but nah, that's not where they're at. They're in Dothan. Now, is that a big deal? I don't really know. But like I said, I think this is kind of indicative. It kind of shows what their demeanor was. They were wild cowboys. They were just doing whatever they wanted. They was straight wilding out. These dudes was the thugs on a corner, just doing whatever they wanted to do. Verse 18, and they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him. What on earth is going on? Before he can even get up on him, they see him coming and they're already plotting to kill him. This is their younger brother. They are plotting to kill their younger brother. What the vision that he had so infuriated them. His favor with his father so infuriated them that they want to kill him. They're willing to go to some great lengths. Nuts. Straight nuts. Verse 19. And they said one to another, behold, this dreamer cometh. So the dreams are their vessel for hatred against their brother. Now, I don't think that the dreams are the source of the hatred, right? There's many things about him they didn't like, but they're using this as fuel or as an excuse for their anger. And verse 20, come now, therefore, let us slay him and cast him into some pit, and we will say some evil beasts have devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. So pretty much what they're trying to do is they didn't like his dreams. Now, Joseph's dreams, even though it doesn't explicitly say, Joseph's dreams came from God. This was a vision from God. God blessed Joseph with a unique gift to be able to interpret these dreams, right? So this is something that God ordained. So his brothers are trying to thwart what God ordained. In their minds, they're like, well, if we kill him, this definitely can't come true. But let's see what happens. Let's see if they actually are able to carry that out. And Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands and said, let us not kill him. So somebody here has a modicum of common sense. Like, not all there, but at least a modicum, a little smidgen of common sense is left in at least one of his brothers. And Reuben said unto them, shed no blood, but cast him into this pit, that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that he might rid him out of their hands, to deliver him to his father again. So Reuben, had some good intentions. He was like, yo, I can't let them do this. Yo, let's throw him in this pit, right? With the intention of him being delivered back to Israel. And it came to pass, when Joseph was come unto his brethren, that they stripped him of his coat of many colors, that was on him, and they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty. There was no water in it. So they threw their brother into this dry pit. Imagine what Joseph must have been thinking at this time. Now, I don't know the dynamics of these brothers. We don't get, specific details per se, but something tells me that Joseph might have had an inclination, like he's the little, you have what I call the little brother syndrome, right? Little brothers know they annoy their older brothers. It just happens. But I don't think he thought in his mind, my brothers want to do me harm. Imagine the shock of Joseph. He's younger than the rest of them, arguably really naive. He's probably in shock, like, yo, what the heck is going on? They just stripped my coat. They threw me in this pit. Like, what is really good? Verse 25. And they sat down to eat bread, and they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead with their camels, bearing spicery and balm and myrrh, going to carry it down to Egypt. And Judah said unto his brethren, what profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites. Let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And his brethren were content. So clearly, all of them weren't necessarily on board with this idea of killing their brother, but they waited to speak up. Now, none of this should have happened. And this is what happens when you get into environments of what is called or referred to today as group thought, where nobody stops to think to themselves, wait a minute, let me consider what it is that we're talking about here, that we're talking about doing, because I don't know if this is something that we should do. And normally what happens when there is no pullback, when there is no one executing common sense, is you just add insult to injury. They're gonna make a bad situation worse. And that's exactly what they do, right? So well, let's put it this way. They intended to make a bad situation worse, but as we know the story, God still worked everything out. And again, as I always say, you will not thwart God's will. You can either be in the way or in the way. God's will be done. You can either do what you're supposed to do and aid and assist in God's will here on earth, or you could get in the way and get rolled over and chastised. You can be in the way or in the way, but God's will be done. Verse 28. Then there passed by Midianites, merchantmen, and they drew and lift up Joseph out of the pit and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. Sound familiar? And they brought Joseph into Egypt. And Reuben returned unto the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in the pit, and he rent his clothes. Reuben had every intention of doing right by his brother. He did not want to go along with this, even though he partly went along with it. And this it kind of reminds me of what I was saying the other day. Sometimes you don't have to necessarily be combative to say, no, this is not right, and this is what the Bible teaches. Reuben could have easily said, look, I understand we have some animosity toward him. He's our father's favorite, but we can't do this. This is our brother. We cannot allow this to pass. He didn't know that it was going to go to this length, and now he's upset. And he returned unto his brethren and said, the child is not, and whither shall I go? He's like, man, what am I going to do? How are we going to go back to Israel after this? What are we going to say to him? And they took Joseph's coat. See, this is where, again, the deception comes in. They could have been honest and told Israel what happened, but that's not what they're going to do. Where did they learn this? They learned this from Ishmael, and they learned it from their grandfather, right? And they took Joseph's coat and killed a kid of goats and dipped the coat in the blood. And they sent the coat of many colors, and they brought it to their father and said, "This have we found. Know now whether it be thy son's coat or no." And he knew it and said, "It is my son's coat. An evil beast hath devoured him. Joseph is without doubt rent in pieces." And Jacob rent his clothes and put on sackcloth upon his loins and mourned for his son many days. Now, I don't know exactly how long this was, but I'm inclined to believe when they say many days, it was a lot. He loved his son. He loved all his sons, but particularly his youngest son, Joseph. He loved him. But again, this is Israel's deceit coming back to bite him. The very thing he did to Esau, the very thing he had an issue with, is coming back to bite him. And again, I'll quote this verse one more time. "Be not deceived. God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. He that soweth to the flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption. He that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting." No one will escape that Bible truth. Not me, not the worldwide federated internet, the listeners. No one will escape that truth. Don't think that you're going to be that lucky person and, "Oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get away with it." Trust me, it's not going to happen that way. And all his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said, "For I will go down into the grave unto my son mourning." Thus his father wept for him. When it says he wept, weeping is not just, a little whimper. He was broken, completely broken over what he thought happened to Joseph. And the Midianites sold into Egypt, and the Midianites sold him into Egypt unto Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh's and a captain of the guard. And again, we know how this story turns out. Even though the brothers of Joseph, the sons of Israel, executed this foolishness and what they did to their brother, God's will was still done. And God, even in their wickedness, God used this and had mercy on them and preserved them through some hard times. That really, so you see a combination of things here. You see God's mercy, right? In that even though they intended this thing for evil, as we're gonna see later on, I'm quoting Joseph, as they meant this thing for evil, God meant it for good, right? God used that situation that they meant for evil, and God worked it out for good anyway. God had mercy on them and used this situation to spare Joseph's family. So we see two things. We see God's mercy and his sovereignty, and we see God's chastisement, right? The very issue that Israel had with deception has come full circle and has really brought him to his knees. But even in that, we see God's mercy toward the end of that. If you know the story, you know the account, you know how this works out. Israel gets to see Joseph again before he dies. And the one thing I can draw from this is, even in God's chastisement toward us. He is merciful. Y'all know what it is. Stay frosty, people.